I want to get this off my chest because I'm seeing a lot of this sentiment on Twitter. And as frustrating as some of his decisions have been, you just can't take away credit from Rafael Stone for putting this team together. You just can't. Nobody in this Rockets media space was a bigger proponent of Şengün than I was, right? Like, you're not going to find it. Like, before he played his first NBA game, I had multiple articles up about him. Like, I did a profile about him.
So you were smitten from day one. That's
I was a big guy. I was a big Şengün
take the
guy.
victory lap then. Just take it.
No, so like I say that to say I understand more than anyone the frustration that folks have with the organization for kind of undercutting him at seemingly every turn, right? But Stone did trade for the guy. As you said, he traded for the guy. He gave up 2 first-rounders. I don't care if it was his idea or not. And frankly, I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend like I do, like some people out there. No one knows whose idea it was to take Şengün. Most of the stuff that's out there is pure speculation. And even if it wasn't his idea, let's just say for a second, it wasn't his idea. Well, he had the presence of mind to act on that idea, right? He had the presence of mind to execute on it, right? Like the same thing with the Fred VanVleet over James Harden thing, right? Like he may have preferred James Harden, but he took Ime Udoka's idea of going after VanVleet, right? When you listen to smart people, that says a lot about you.
Yeah.
Right? It just does. You don't get to take this stuff away from him. He certainly hasn't been perfect, but for the most part, in my opinion, I think he's done a pretty good job of putting this core together. And I don't want to hear this about how Stone was this naive bystander through all the good decisions, while also being the driving force behind all their ill-advised decisions. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't. Like, he's the GM. Everything the organization does from a basketball ops perspective goes on his resume. Like the same thing with the Morey Westbrook trade. Like Morey has to own that. That goes on his resume. He even went on the record with that on his resume. I don't care where it came from. That goes on. That's on him, right? You are ultimately responsible for the decisions you make. And that narrative just kind of bothered me. I'm sorry. That wasn't more so a question. I just need to get that off my chest.
Well, there's you can't be perfect. And I feel like people, let's look at Denver with Michael Malone as their head coach, where he got unprecedented time. And there were excuses to explain away their struggles, injuries, mostly things that happen to them. But you're ridiculed if you stick with one thing for too long rather than being celebrated if you see something's not working. And even if it takes you too long to get away from it, Steven Silas, for example, or even if it takes you too long to get to Alperen Şengün, the fact that you still ended up here, it's not something everyone could have done. And I think what really does help Stone is not all of this stuff is just sort of revelatory. Where the Şengün thing, yes, it was maddening from your perspective to not see them focus on him more until now. But it's not really a coincidence that you finally make the coaching change and then this gets unearthed. To my point, though, that was a weird detour there. Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, all these guys were just they were already fines. And even just Jalen Green is, you can quibble over well, what is his ceiling going to be? That's going to be a legitimate NBA player. And so even though if you haven't the process of what was unfolding on the court, a lot of the stuff that was happening when you're looking at how their roster was built, setting themselves up for the cap space that they had this past summer, when it's a unique weapon in the sense that free agency is not what it used to be. But if you have money to throw around and are willing to spend it, look at what you can do. He was probably just using them as leverage, but okay, you didn't want to see him come in and take minutes away from Alperen Şengün, but Brook Lopez was talking to you. That got you into a conversation that you otherwise wouldn't have been. Were you used as a stalking horse? I don't know. Do you want to troll Rafael Stone and co. because they had Şengün and they were still looking at Lopez? Lopez is one of the best rim protectors of the decade. And so I understand from a theory perspective what they were trying to do. So yeah, it's just interesting how, this comes back to people remember your misses more than your hits. And so it's just easier to focus on. And I think that is probably a big reason why. And a lot of the times it's sort of superstar syndrome, where it's if player X loses, it's, oh, did they not have enough help? And if they win, it's oh, they were the driving force. It's that type of analysis. Not everyone follows it, but you're in the quest to simplify things down or make everything binary. And then I think we live in a world, as I already mentioned, where it's so much easier to, one, maybe not forgive the misses, but you're going to accentuate and spotlight the failures and just kind of forget about what you were right about. Whereas, look, if you came, no one's going to remember that you were early on Şengün. But if he had kind of flamed out of the league, everyone would remember that you were like going to the hill for this guy. It's like, so last year I picked the Nuggets to win the title in the preseason and no one else was doing that. I was told I was crazy. It wasn't like no one remembers that I picked the Nuggets, but if they like flamed out in the first round, everyone would have remembered that I picked the Nuggets to win the title.